Welcome, my friend, to Next Level Change Success. I'm Therese, a change strategist and practitioner with over 20 years of experience designing and delivering impactful change programs across various industries. In this podcast, I share real-world practical strategies to help you create and deliver positive change experiences, whether you're a leader, practitioner, or someone looking to bring new ways of working to life. In today's fast-paced world, change is constant. Here we focus on how you can put people at the centre of your change strategy, because people with a sense of purpose are the most important link in driving performance. So if you're ready to create meaningful change and achieve all the success that comes with it, keep listening. Together, let's change the conversation and take it to the next level. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Next Level Change Success. My name is Therese and I'm the founder of myvirtualchangemanager.com. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm recording on Tharawal country and pay my respects to the traditional owners and custodians on the land on which I am recording, and to elders both past, present and emerging. So today I'm talking about culture, and does culture impact an organisation's ability to change? And the resounding answer to that is yes. So that's the episode for today. No, I'm going to unpack why culture does have such an impact on change and the adaptability of an organisation. But culture is one element, and culture is made up of structures, processes, behaviours, acceptable behaviours, frameworks within an organisation. And we often find that where culture is starting to erode or become so disjointed across an organisation, where values aren't reflected in behaviours, and when you get that disconnect, it's mainly because there hasn't been a conscious focus on culture. And I do subscribe to culture trumps strategy. It also trumps your ability to change if you're finding that your culture is one where siloed behaviours, conflict, competition within, a lack of leadership cohesion, no roadmap, no visibility, structures in relation to communication might be breaking down, may not be evident, communication may be very poor in your organisation, and that it simply erodes your ability to adapt, to engage, and to have a healthy relationship with change in an organisation. And it can result in conflict. You're going to see a lot more illness in organisations or discomfort in organisations. You will see the loss and leaking of talent as a result of a poor culture. And at an individual level, some of the things which really do happen from an individual's perspective is a lack of role clarity, a lack of concern for welfare, burnout, and essentially people leaving the organisation. If they are a high performer, they won't stick around in an organisation where the culture isn't aligned with their core values, and where the behaviours make things just simply too hard to deliver improvement, continuous improvement, and move things forward. So let's go through a couple of key things here. And I know that culture programs that get rolled out, I've witnessed it, and I've done it differently when I've implemented a culture-based program. The typical diagnostic and then picking an off-the-shelf product for leadership training and then rolling that out across an organisation will not fundamentally change your organisation's culture without top-down understanding, focus, collective focus within a leadership team, having people in that leadership team who share the same goals and, to a degree, values, but with healthy diversity, with the right psychological safety. These are an outcome of good diversity and healthy respect across the leadership team. Then, dependent upon the layers in your organisation, having robust conversations and the same role modeling happening within each department, division, team is really critical. Having multi-tiered feedback loops so that you can triangulate conversation and data with the feedback that you get at all levels of the organization is really critical. And having a commitment of a 2 to 5 year time frame for a healthy culture to be created and to be consciously focused on, and having a 2 to 5 year time frame in which leadership understands the journey that they're going on in relation to culture change, their role in it, that they have also had those discussions and workshops with their leadership teams, integrating the strategy as part of that conversation, but really focusing on some key behaviors, placing that into structures in an organization around performance and what you're linking in relation to those key performance indicators. And even if you have teams who are on enterprise bargaining agreements or other sort of employment arrangements, that there's still the option and a focus on development of people as part of your cultural performance and as part of your cultural commitment. These are things that do shift the dial around culture. The other key thing is that you would want turnover of staff as a result of your culture change. And I know that can sound really controversial or really, I guess, cutthroat, but the reality is, and if you think about the basic principles and the laws of attraction, for those of you who might have delved into that arena, people gravitate towards those people who are moving forward in an organization, the positive cultural framework, and who are articulating that, role modeling good leadership. Good leadership at the top tier levels is going to attract good talent. It is going to have those who aren't willing to go on that longer term journey, either opt out or potentially be managed out as part of the process, because their behaviours are no longer going to align with the cultural behaviours that you want to be seen, repeated, role modelled, shared across an organisation. Interestingly, what I have observed and through rolling out culture change is that people who might have been tagged as a disruptor, a person who just objects to change all the time, or they make everything so hard, sometimes are the biggest advocates and have just been waiting to be empowered. And so their behaviour with a corrupt culture, I guess, has been to be very vocal, to be almost perceived as a troublemaker from those who simply want people to just do what they say and not co-collaborate. And yet when you get a different leader in those teams, then the behaviour of those individuals changes. And they all of a sudden become this great ambassador, whether it be for customers, whether it be for the organisation, because finally they're being empowered. And if you're a leader who's come into an organisation and you've inherited a team and people are telling you about the people within the team and there's varied views on each of your team members, I think it's really important that you take the feedback with a grain of salt and then you have your experience, because leadership is so powerful and can be so disempowering if the leader is a micromanager, if they're someone who basically does not want to co-collaborate, whether it be with their peer group or even with their team, when they feel, and possibly driven by their own insecurity, feel the need to dominate a conversation all the time or to double check everything that their team's doing because they don't have the trust and they don't empower their people. Those type of leaders do generate poor behaviour as a result of their own leadership approach. When you change that person out and switch them out with someone who's far more empowering, really caring about the people, really wanting to create a performing team, the behaviours of those individuals in turn changes. Now, coming back to what I was talking about around turnover, those who do enjoy and may have had a sense of power if they had, I guess, an in with their existing leader, even if that existing leader was a micromanager. Typically, a byproduct of dysfunctional leadership is that they play favorites. And as a result of that, then some individuals had power in that dynamic. When the leader changes, their power dissipates. And so they become the disgruntled employee, I guess, or the team member who then opts to leave or opts to go elsewhere. Typically, sometimes follow the leader who might have left or exited the organization. But that migration, I guess, of talent but that migration of team members, which happens, whether it be at leadership level or team member level, is a positive thing. Certainly when you are consciously driving for cultural change and you know that there have been potential leadership issues in certain areas through feedback. And so what we talk about is regrettable losses, and that's the loss of talent in an organization. So someone who you really wanted to retain, but who might have just left at the beginning of the journey because they're simply burnt out from the environment, versus those who all of a sudden are inspired and re-engaged, versus non-regrettable losses, which are the people who may have role modeled old and continually role modeled old behavior. Even given the feedback and even with the reset and the conscious vision around where the organization is going, those individuals will not hang around for the long-term journey because they don't enjoy the environment of collaboration. They just want to be able to be in control of their own domain and have agency in an unhealthy way to do what they want. So they're probably doing things in a silo. Now they're expected to collaborate. They don't want to do that. And so they go elsewhere where they can find an environment in which they thrive again to be able to behave the way that they've always behaved. So everyone does get the opportunity to change in this process, of course, and everyone is given the feedback around, we used to do this, but now we do that. We used to, I've just communicated new processes. You haven't followed that process. If you can, that would be great because, we want to role model and share part of this journey. We want to show that this can work. If the individual continues to do a default process or doesn't keep other people informed and there's continual conflict, then the conversation comes down to, do you really want to be within this organization? Because we're changing and this is a new way of working, and I can see that it may be something that you're not really up for. So what's going on? And tough conversations, and this is part of cultural change, is the level and number of tough conversations increases. That's what change is all about. It's stepping into the uncomfortable. And sometimes the uncomfortable is we are now really focused on ensuring that we're upholding integrity, ensuring that we are working as a team. So, what's going on for you that you're struggling a little bit in relation to collaboration? Are there certain skill sets, certain training that you might need to go on to be able to develop that aspect around workshopping? And it is important to mention that for some people, they may need further skill development because communication may not be their strong point. But for them to be successful in moving into this new culture and being successful in it, there may need to be some skill development. So of course, the fact that people leave an organisation is an inevitable factor. The reality is, are you still losing the talent that you would ideally like to retain through this change? Is it enough momentum? Is there enough momentum happening culturally that the more and more there's more alignment to new behaviours, to new ways of working? Is there more feedback and intangible improvement, not just little dial nudges, but tangible uplift regarding collaboration, integrity, whatever the values are? And what mechanisms are you putting in place? And do you have enough triangulation of feedback across teams to see that as a whole and collectively everyone is moving forward? And this is where your engagement survey, so there are various feedback points. Obviously, people and culture, absences, leave, like how well are people managing, providing feedback, Are there any HR issues that are cropping up across the board? But also, what's the engagement survey telling you? What's the word on the street telling you? That's important too. When the leader walks the floor, what are they seeing? What do they see when they come in the morning, when people are in the office, or when they're online? What's the type of behaviour? What's the attendance rates to training? What training and investment have we put in our people? What feedback is as a result of that? All of those type of indicators help you understand whether you're making cultural shifts or not. And I have said it before and I will say it again, even in times of structure change in organisations, you can improve your cultural indicators. Some cultures have become that dysfunctional in a lot of ways that the changes that can happen during that structure change process can be extremely welcomed by team members. Leadership changes can really see such a shift in an organisation because of the power element that leaders hold. And so do not think that, and I see this happen often, is that if engagement survey results start going south and you're making structure changes, that you can blame it on the structure changes. It's how well those structure changes are actually dealt with, managed, how strong the communication is, how strong the vision is that you set during those times, which can either hold your engagement results constant or have them actually fall backwards. And the other thing I will talk about with engagement surveys is that they have to be constructed well. Never ceased to amaze me when I saw some culture questions or engagement survey questions which just simply did not make sense. And I don't know where they'd been manufactured from in the organisation at the time that I was in, but it seemed that someone had just pulled 3 questions out of their pocket and thought that they would just roll that out across the organisation. And none of that seemed to make sense, and yet they used that engagement survey almost as a weapon. And it just seemed very inexperienced to me. And for such an important feedback tool, you want to make sure that your engagement survey lines up with your cultural indicators, that it makes sense to the people completing the survey so that you get the right data and intel from that, and that you are ensuring that the investment in unpacking comments and feedback, that analysis is done rigorously and well with experienced individuals. Without doubt, the formation of culture roles across organisations is a little bit frightening because it doesn't seem to have the level of experience that they should have in understanding the need for good analysis, for understanding the links between structures, like what all those cultural elements are, and to be able to put in place a really robust culture strategy, which relies 100% on every other person in an organisation. Culture is not owned by the people and culture group. And I saw the change from human resources to people and culture, and now I'm hearing that people and culture no longer want culture as part of their title, because the reality is it outsources the cultural aspects. And I would wholeheartedly agree with that and say that rebranding was ill-informed, because culture does not sit in a division of an organisation. It sits at the leadership level for ownership, and everyone needs to understand culture when it comes to leaders and how it gets measured, how the feedback happens from a leadership level, from top down, understanding how they affect the culture in a positive or negative way, and how those cultural indicators become part of their scorecard as a leader in the organisation. So critical for culture change. And so then also part of this, you really have to unpack leadership development. I've said it time and time again, most leaders go into a leadership role, as I did in my career, without any training. It was simply, you're now promoted, you're the people leader, because you had subject matter expertise. And so it is really, really important in organisations, and if you're looking at culture, and this is all part of the structure piece as well, and frameworks, is what does your capability framework look like for leaders in their own leadership journey, where they are developed in an organisation, and they're developed well to be able to create, manage high-performing teams and create the right environment that lines up with the cultural premise of the organisation. And those culture programs need to be at least a 1 to 2 year proposition for leaders in the organisation. You will definitely see the link between a pathway for leaders and how that improves retention, how it improves engagement, and how it should improve performance with their people if you have all of the other structural elements and enablers in place in your organisation. So culture, it's a big conversation, but it is absolutely achievable to put in place a really robust culture-based program from top down, which doesn't just scratch the surface. It's not about putting posters up and reinterrogating your values. Oftentimes you don't need to revisit the values because the values were always never the issue. It's about looking at how you're aligning your structures and your behaviours, your scorecards, your capability frameworks, and ensuring that your feedback framework is really robust when it comes to culture. Then you have a really good mechanism for culture change within your organisation and creating a culture where change is incorporated into the DNA. I hope you found this episode insightful and interesting, because culture is so important when it comes to change. It can be a great enabler, it can be a great inhibitor, and we want to make sure that everyone is starting to raise their awareness in relation to what is culture, what does it mean, not get caught up in the definition of it, but understand how the structures and mechanisms all combine to be able to provide a really great catch-all for culture in your organisation. And then, of course, making sure that your leaders are aware of that and all of the different elements and how they contribute to culture on an everyday basis, how they can also construct within their teams and their divisions a really positive culture or really inhibitive culture, and that really a lot of that depends upon them. And then, of course, the cultures where people have being able to create a culture program with some taglines, with some consistent behaviours, making sure you're not overreaching. I've seen lists of behaviours which have been just quite frankly crazy around how many different behaviours are outlined, and no one could talk to even one behaviour because it had been rolled out that here's all the behaviours under each value. It's too overwhelming for people. And so part of it is simple is best. A simple pathway, have it a 2 to 5 year journey, but show this is our focus for year 1. 2 behaviours we're focusing on. This is how we're going to measure it. This is how we're going to incorporate it into our engagement survey. This is what we hope that we can see over the next 12 months. Checkpoint it. See if you need to then expand, dependent upon how your strategy, what your overall strategy is, to either replace one of those values with another value if you didn't achieve what you wanted to achieve around alignment of behaviour. Then it comes into continuing to focus on the other value and then keep that moving forward. So these are the things that you can do if you have a really robust culture facilitator who can work with your leadership teams, get agreement, campaign it through, weave it into all areas of the organisation as you're deploying change and as you're communicating your strategy, that everyone is a mouthpiece for the strategy, they're a mouthpiece for the culture, and they're a mouthpiece for everyday behaviours, and that the leadership line up with that. And then, of course, when you're attracting talent to your organisation, you're measuring based on those values, those skill sets, those capabilities. You're making sure that, say, if one of your values is equality, that you're making sure that your recruitment process is robust, that people are declaring where there might be a conflict of interest, where there is a non-bias and there's proper process around how people can be promoted or how people are recruited or how people are seconded. And you really do flavour that through, and it just helps support your culture and in particular that value. So there's so many ways you can do it. And it can be very practical, because I don't care as a team member about what you say as a leader. I care about what you do. And as most leaders will always try to justify their behavior, if it's poor behavior, well, I had to do that because blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to do that. And I should be able to do that if I want to. That's within policy. Yeah, I get that. But what message does it send? And as a leader, you are always on the hook around role modeling the best when it comes to your organization and your organization's values. And we've seen a little bit, of course, in the public arena lately, where people are not role modeling, and even at senior executive level, potentially not role modeling or haven't role modeled. And here's a tale as old as time. They haven't role modeled the right value system. And you can see to the detriment what that can do to organizations. But then think about the flip side, where people they're aligned, they're living it, they've got a great leadership team, the workplace is far more enjoyable, your team members are far more engaged, and that's what we all want to be part of. I'm sure you're listening to this right now, but you can imagine how much energy you have walking through the door of an organization where you have values alignment, where you really like the people and you're supported to do your job, and you have role clarity. It's happy days. It's not rocket science, yet it seems so difficult because everyone is busy in an ineffective way versus focusing on the things that will improve performance, the things that will matter to your team members. And it's not sitting around having coffees. This is about clarity, enablers being put in place, consciously creating your culture. You will always reap performance off the back of that. Anyway, I hope, just get off my soapbox there. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed talking about this, and hopefully you got a few insights about things that you can look at if you are in a people and culture function or human resources function, where you can affect some of the decisions being made and some of the areas of focus that can shift the dial when it comes to culture for your organization. Come to myvirtualchangemanager.com. We have a lot going on and some courses spinning up. Reach out, stay in touch, sign up for our newsletter, stay across what we're doing. We've got some fantastic stuff happening in the back end of this year that you might want to be part of. And just remember that change matters because your people matter. And have a great day.